r/ask Reddit. Parents of Reddit, what's the most embarrassing thing your child did in public, and what did you do in that moment? This was back in 1998. I live in a fairly small town in British Columbia, Canada. It is about 99.9% white people. I had my daughter at the grocery store and there was a person of color at the checkout. My 2-year-old pointed at her and said, "Oprah. Oprah." I died. My soul left my body. Completely full of grace, the lady laughed and then said, "Oh, I wish I was Oprah." My oldest had a talent for finding hard surfaces with his head. He smacked into a door frame at preschool when he fell off a bouncy horse and had a huge goose egg in the middle of his forehead. Gravity did its thing and the blood in the goose egg slid down his face, blacking both eyes. A few days after, he looked like he went 3 rounds with Mike Tyson. He was at the airport with his aunt and cousin waiting for grandma to get off the plane. A lady said, "Oh, you have 2 beautiful children." He could have said, "Oh, this is my aunt," or "she's my cousin." Instead, he looked up at her sadly with 2 black eyes and said, "I don't belong to these people." His aunt hissed, "You're gonna get me arrested." My 4-year-old walked in on me while I was changing my pad and he was concerned about me bleeding, so I explained to him that I'm okay, etc. The next day I took him to our local mom and pop toy shop, and when we got to the counter to pay, he said to the owners, "My mommy's bleeding from her PP but she's okay." They said, "Oh, okay. Would you like a bag?" For some reason when my kid was learning the word freckle it came out "F you." So we were in line at Starbucks and I was holding my daughter and this lady comes up behind us who had a freckle on her cheek and my daughter points and goes, "F you." My child was about 4 years old. This was the early 80s. We're on a bus and a chic gentleman walked on the bus and my kid says, "Oh look mommy, it's a genie." Reminds me when we were in London, my 4-year-old saw a Muslim woman in full burqa, only a slit for the eyes, and he yelled, "Look mom, it's a ninja." My son and I were standing in a line when he was about that age when a Mennonite man stood in line behind us. My son wouldn't stop staring. "But, Mom, he's a real-life cowboy." The man said, "He's not wrong. I used to live in an area with a large Amish and Mennonite community, and one of my coworkers said she was at Walmart with her daughter, who was then about 5 years old, and the daughter said, loud enough for them to hear, 'Look, Mommy. Pilgrims.' I told her that they probably hear it all the time, and had a good laugh about it on the way home." My 3-year-old son was finishing up swim lessons and I asked him to hurry up and dry off, get his shoes on because I needed to use the restroom. Him, peepees or duties, Mom? Me, it doesn't matter honey, let's just get our shoes on and go. Him, peepees or duties? Loud enough for people to start looking at us. Me, we don't need to talk about that. Him, peepees or duties mommy? Now everyone is looking. Me, can we just hurry please? Him, must be duties then. I died. Not a parent, but a story about my little brother from a couple years ago. So background, me and my family are from an extremely small town in the middle of Pennsylvania, in a very beautiful and quiet area that just so happens to have an extremely dominant Caucasian population. Because of this, me and my brother both had very little general experience with minorities of any kind, as we were young and also completely surrounded by 100% white children and adults all the time. So back in 2008, my family traveled to New York City for a family wedding, introducing both me and my 6-year-old brother to the city for the very first time. It also just so happens that President Obama had just recently been elected president over John McCain, so that was all over the news. These two pieces of information tied together when we arrived in New York City on the train, and my brother immediately ran up to the very first black man he's ever seen in real life, screaming, "President Obama, hi President Obama." Not only did this happen once, but it ended up happening over a dozen times on the trip, as my little brother could not seem to comprehend that black men from the city were not all Barack Obama. Not my child, but my nephew. My mom, older sister and I were wedding dress shopping for my upcoming wedding, 15 years ago. My sister's husband was at work, so she brought along my 3-year-old nephew, who would end up being my ring bearer. At the bridal place there are mirrors everywhere. As the 3 of us are talking about the dress I was trying on, we realize that my nephew was being too quiet. We look over, and he had his back to one of the mirrors, bent over, pants around his ankles, and he was mooning himself. I laughed so hard I started crying, but my sister was mortified. We were at a restaurant and the 4 of us ordered, wife and 2 kids. Waiter is standing next to my youngest, about 6 at the time, and puts his hand out. To me, He quite clearly wants my son to return the menu. My son quickly glanced up at the waiter, then at his hand, then at me like, what do I do? Before anyone can say anything, my son reaches in his mouth, pulls out his chewing gum, and sticks it right in this poor man's hand. I turned bright red and wanted to disappear. Only after I realized I do the same unspeaking hand gesture when I want him to give me his gum before eating or in church. Such an innocent mistake, but damn that one hurt. My daughter, 5, asked to see a hedgehog's vulva when a pet store employee was holding it. So that my daughter saw a guy in a wheelchair and pointed and yelled, "Look dad, it's a car man." My mom used a wheeled walker and had special hard boots to the knee because she had lost feeling due to diabetes. There was a small child at her bus stop who had lots of questions about her pirate boots. She would see him once in a while and he always had more questions for her, about treasure, about her ship, and about her parrot. I don't know that kid, but I adore him. One day when my eldest was about 6, he woke up claiming he was sick. He was groggy and a little warm, and complained of a scratchy throat, so I kept him home from school and called in sick to work. I put him back to bed and sat down to play a video game while the kid slept. Around 10 a.m. the kid is not only not fallen back asleep, he's bouncing around the house giddily, so I decide he's not sick after all and needs to go to school. It takes me about 10 minutes to find a save point, and then I save, get him dressed and drive him over. When we walk in the school office, the receptionist greets us and goes to check the kid in. As per procedure, she asks us why my son is late arriving at school. Before I can open my mouth, my darling son says, "Oh, I'm late because mom was playing video games." I don't remember the details of how I tried to salvage that, but I remember the receptionist didn't buy it. I might have ruined the kid's free day off, but he got me back. Pass very large woman in Christmas crowded grocery aisle. As the cart is passing, my daughter loudly exclaims her bobs are huge. Felt my soul leave my body from embarrassment. When I was a toddler I thought bobs were called elbows for some reason. It took my mom a while to correct me because I kept pointing out women's big elbows. It's a funny story that my mom tells now. This is a story my mom told me about me. When I was 4 years old, I woke up in the middle of the night and came to the living room where my mom was watching a documentary about dwarfism. One of the subjects that was touched on was how they were bullied. My mom took this as a teaching moment about accepting others' differences, and I should never bully someone because of how they look, and particularly not because of their height. Fast forward 6 months, my mom has all but completely forgotten about this interaction and is in line at the grocery store, holding me. She's holding me in such a way that I'm facing behind her. She feels me lean forward, and turns her head just in time to see me with my finger pointed accusingly at the random person behind me. I say, very sternly and with authority, "If you're ever mean to a dwarf, I'll suck your brains out with a fork." She still doesn't know where I got the idea that one could suck another's brains out with a fork. My then 3-year-old boy was riding in the toy car shopping cart contraption they have at some grocery stores, and my wife is pushing the cart down the aisle, and we come upon an older lady who momentarily is blocking the aisle with her cart as she reaches for something on a lower shelf. We stop for a second as the lady pulls her cart out of the way with "Oh sorry," and my boy smacks the little plastic steering wheel with his hand and straight up yells, "Get the fuck out of the way, you moron." I got an extensive and well-deserved lecture from my wife about what I say in front of him while driving. At my mother's funeral, my niece waited for the quietest, most solemn moment before the service began, the vicar standing next to coffin, to ask excitedly, "What's in the box?" It really lightened the mood. When our daughter was in preschool, my wife picked her up once and she asked, very loudly, if my wife would take her to the liquor store. My wife calmly asked why, and she said to get some liquors. Meaning suckers. Had to go to the chemist to pick up a prescription for my sister, took my 3-year-old niece with me. The pharmacist comes out from the back of the shop to confirm details with me. My niece shouts he's black like Merle. He very kindly says to her, "Do you have a friend like me?" She boldly says no, she's my dog. We had a layover with our 4-year-old at DFW. You know, the High Capacity International Airport? We were in the people mover when I looked down and saw him licking the handrail. Other parents were staring with shocks and giggles. We later had to potty, so we went to the men's room. He dropped his pants to his ankles like a lot of kids do, not the embarrassing part. I looked away for a few seconds, then looked back to see he was supporting himself by propping both of his hands up inside the urinal. I was in a business class flight with my 4-year-old and they were just learning at preschool to take their plates to the kitchen. He finished his meal and went to take the plate to the galley. I told him to leave it as the lady would come and take the plate. The flight attendant walked past and he says, "Lady, take the plate." When my friend was 4, she was so bad/screamy etc. on a long road trip, so her sister said, "If you don't stop it, you're going to ride all the way home in the trunk." The next time they were at church, she was acting up again, so her mom walked her out from front of the church carrying her while she screamed, "Please don't put me in the trunk." I was the child. When I was a toddler, growing up in a beach community in the 80s, I would run away from my family and steal French fries from strangers, like some sort of chubby blonde seagull. My 18-month-old son pulled off a man's toupee on a flight. Ooh, my middle child. She's super sweet and absolutely loves Christmas. When she was learning how to read, she'd sound out every word she saw on street signs, billboards, etc. So, we were in the drive-thru for Starbucks. And I hear her sound out the word holidays. Just as the barista is about to hand me my drinks, my sweet baby girl yells out from behind me, "Mommy, I know what it says." She's super excited and yells at the top of her lungs, "Happy holidays, whores." I felt the color drain from my face as I stare at the barista while my kid is repeating what she just said. I frantically look at what she was reading only to see she mispronounced ours. I apologized over and over again. Luckily, the young lady just laughed it off. I avoided that Starbucks for the rest of that holiday season. About 9 years ago. My kid was very small and kept screaming, "What the hell?" in a church. My son asked the cashier at TJ Maxx, "Do you have nightmares?" He used to also pretend to cast spells on strangers. Love my little weirdo. My uncle, when he was little, his mom told him he'd get fat if he kept biting his nails. A few weeks later, they were in the grocery store and a pregnant lady was behind them in line. My uncle looks at her and says, "I know what you've been doing." As always, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, show your support. Leave your thoughts and opinions down below.